Kevin, it's been a while since we've had you guys on, but a lot's happened since then. I'm thinking about California, obviously, but also big investments in various players from the likes of Constellation Brands. Have things moved as quickly as you thought they would when we spoke last and things felt a little more speculative?
Things are moving a lot faster than when we had last anticipated and was last on the show. I think 2019 is going to be a year of consolidation, a lot of mergers taking place, and we believe, and others are starting to believe, that bigger is better in this industry. Having 19 states and being the biggest in the U.S., it's no surprise that many are merging to try to catch us, but we have a number of mergers in the pipeline as well, and we hope to keep the pace along with everyone else.
Speaker Boehner, reading this company's conference call was like getting a briefing state by state of all the different laws, local laws that are being passed and progress that's being made. How do you see progress happening at a state level, and what can we expect, whether it will trickle through to the national level?
Well, with 33 states now approving the use of cannabis in some form, and of those 33, more and more are beginning to look at recreational use in their states. It's clear that this market is going to expand. And as it does, lawmakers in Washington have to look up and realize that the federal government is way out of step. It's time for the federal government to get out of the way. And so I'm hopeful that Congress will soon act.
So we've seen steps toward that, right? Leader McConnell supporting CBD. You had Beto O'Rourke yesterday suggesting that there should be a federal legalization of, I think, recreational, and then maybe make other efforts to make it seem maybe less usable in the sense that we've done to big tobacco over the years. Kevin, I wonder what kind of odds would you put on something at the federal level?
We're very optimistic, and we're doing a lot of work in Washington to have the states act pass. And we believe that the federal government should leave it to the states to govern their states, and this would enable each state that has either a medical or a recreational state do business and really not be concerned about the feds coming in and interfering. I'm optimistic. I believe it's going to happen late this year, latest early next year.
Really? Speaker Boehner, that timeline work for you?
Yeah, I think so. Listen, I was in the political realm for 35 years, and when the American people speak, their representatives listen. And the American people are speaking, and I think Congress is closer and closer to actually moving to get the federal government out of the way.
So, Kevin, then how are you positioned in the U.S. market versus some of your competitors that we talk about on a more regular basis, like a Canopy or a Tilray?
Well, given we are in the U.S. and Canopy and Tilray are in Canada, we see it as really a two-part business. North America consists of Canada and the U.S. We're the largest in the U.S., and we have a very significant and dominant position in the Northeast. So with our collection of assets in the Northeast and a seismic change this week with New Jersey now agreeing to push forward very quickly to adult use, we believe that New York and Connecticut and Rhode Island will follow. States like Massachusetts and Maine, we have, again, the dominant footprint by a multiple in that region. That region consists of roughly 43 million people, larger than California, but with a lot less competition, given these are limited licenses that are given out with each state. So we couldn't be more optimistic. We've always said the way New Jersey goes, the rest of the East Coast goes, and we're seeing that happen. First steps last week, agreeing to move forward.
Yeah, a lot of people expect New York to move the same way. Speaker Boehner, there's still some out there who look at test cases like Oregon and California and say they're not pulling in the tax revenues that the state hoped for. It's hard to wipe out the black market entirely. Cost of production goes down, and it's very easy to get just huge surges in inventory. What do you say to those people?
Well, every state has their own regime for how they legalize the use of cannabis and how they are allowed to sell it in those states. And clearly, if you look at many of the states, they control the number of cultivators that are allowed to operate in their states, limit the number of dispensaries, and don't seem to have the kind of problems that they have in California and Oregon. And so I would look at the state regime in terms of how it's functioning. But secondly, the point of the black market. If states try to overtax this product, they're going to leave the black market wide open. And I would also add that if the states are going to legalize this use, they should also increase their enforcement on the black market and force people into the regulated business.
Yeah, I was just going to ask Kevin about California specifically, because a lot of these problems Speaker Boehner references relate to California. You guys recently announced you were going into that market. The LA Times has a piece out today saying California's cannabis marketplace is a mess. So what exactly is going on there, and where do you see opportunity?
Well, in California specifically, given it's had a black market and gray market for so long, now that they're regulating that state, it's very, very difficult to put the genie back into the bottle. But they're doing, I think, a very good job. I think they're doing their best. The reason why California is so important to us to be vertically integrated in that state is because we can now grow, process, and now distribute in the state. And that really gives us a test case for brands that we look to capitalize on in the rest of the country. So it's really, to some degree, a petri dish for us to understand what sells, what doesn't in California, and really bring that east. California clearly leads from a branding standpoint. It has been a first mover. So where it's more difficult to operate in that state, for us specifically, we have a real competitive edge there, taking the IP and all the things we learned from that state nationwide.
Finally, gentlemen, Speaker Boehner, I know you don't come on to make news on politics, but we're not going to let you leave without tossing out at least a couple questions.
Really?
I'm sure nothing you haven't been asked
Really?
in Austin. Who gets the Dem nomination, and what are the president's chances of re-election?
Well, on the Democrat side, you're going to have 20 or 25 candidates, and it's hard to imagine which of them will actually capture enough people's attention. But it looks pretty obvious that it's going to be someone what I would describe on the more progressive side. What Democrats are going through in 2016 and 2018 with the progressive movement, Republicans went through in 2010 and 2012 with the Tea Party movement. And so it's their turn in the barrel. And my guess is they'll nominate someone that's very far left, in my view, out of step with where the American people want to go, and thereby increasing the chances of Donald Trump being reelected, assuming that he runs.
So you think this move towards socialism is actually going to catch fire within the Democratic Party?
Oh, I do. There's clearly a movement within the Democrat Party that's been growing. I expect it will grow. But I don't think that's where the American people are. And I frankly think they'll reject it.
Kevin, I wonder, does Acreage and the cannabis industry's interests coincide with any of that progressive agenda, or do you see something similar coming from the right in some way in 2020?
We're hopeful that we can appeal to both the left and the right. Our story has always been generated from this plant has medicinal value. So whether you're Republican or Democrat, black or white, socially rich, or you're frankly not terribly well off, everyone has a story around cannabis. So we believe it's one of the very few bipartisan issues in Washington. Conservative Republicans would like to implement the States Act because they believe, as conservative Republicans, leave it to the states. On the left side, you have people that are believing that choice should be left in their hands, and they are the best to make that choice. But take all the anecdotal stories about the medicinal value of cannabis, throw it out the window, at least give people a choice, because 95% of this country would like to be using cannabis or believe it should be used for medical use. And with those types of numbers, we think we appeal to both the right and the left. And from our vantage point, it's just a matter of time. So we're very optimistic about 19 and believe it takes place later this year, early next year.